I stopped just outside his bedroom door, carrying a basket of his freshly folded laundry, when I heard him say it. She's just a free maid with wrinkles. My knees buckled so fast I nearly dropped the basket. At first, I thought I had misheard, that maybe it was the television or one of his silly TikTok voiceovers again. But then came the laughter, his voice, clear as glass, mixed with another's, that of his girlfriend. "You know," she said, giggling, "it's kind of genius. Free meals, clean clothes, rent-free life. You've got it made. Right?" He chuckled. "All she does is clean and cook. Honestly, if she weren't my mom, I'd feel bad." They both laughed again, as if mocking the very air I breathed. I stood frozen, the basket suddenly unbearably heavy. The walls around me blurred and wavered like a dream, turning into a nightmare. For 24 years, I had given everything I had, not just money or meals, but my youth, my energy, my dreams. I had worked double shifts as a janitor, mopped schools after hours, skipped meals so he could eat more, patched up his clothes instead of buying new ones for myself. I had silenced my own heartbreaks, just so he could grow up feeling whole. And all I was a free maid. I placed the basket quietly by his door, turned around, and walked to my room, every step echoing through the hollow of my ribcage like a slow, cold drumbeat. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I made a list. Not of chores, not of meals, but of every hour, every sacrifice, every dollar. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to do something far more painful. I was going to open his eyes. I was 17 when I found out I was pregnant with Thomas. His father disappeared the day I told him. Just like that. No calls, no letters, just a voicemail saying, "Good luck with that." My parents were already long gone, both passed from illness in a year that chewed up my childhood and spat me out as a lonely girl in a trailer home with barely a high school diploma. But I was never the type to cry over spilled milk. I cleaned houses during the day, studied for my GED at night, and promised myself that my son would never feel the kind of abandonment I had known. I still remember holding Thomas for the first time. He was screaming, pink-faced, fists clenched like he was already fighting the world. But when I touched his cheek, he went quiet, stared up at me with big, dark eyes. In that moment, I made a vow. I'll never let you feel unloved. Not for a second. Raising him wasn't easy. We had months where we lived on ramen and dreams. Christmases with handmade gifts. Summers without vacations, just a kiddie pool in the backyard and popsicles I made from leftover Kool-Aid. But he laughed. He smiled. He told me, "Mom, you're the best in the world." And I believed him. Even when I came home sore from scrubbing toilets at the high school. Even when I wiped blood off cafeteria floors after food fights. Even when my hands cracked from bleach in winters. I believed him. I thought our bond was built on something sacred, not duty, not guilt, but love. So when I heard those words, free maid, it wasn't just betrayal. It was a knife twisting inside all the quiet places I had kept my love for him. The next morning, I woke early, made pancakes as usual, poured his favorite syrup, maple with a hint of cinnamon, and left the plate on the kitchen table. He came out yawning, scratching his head, phone in hand. "Morning, Ma," he said without looking up. I stared at him, at the scruff on his chin, the boyish slouch that never quite left his shoulders, the tattoos peeking from his sleeves. A grown man, but still clinging to the comforts of boyhood. He sat down and dug into his breakfast like nothing had changed. Like he hadn't stripped me of every ounce of meaning with a single sentence. "How's work?" I asked calmly. He shrugged, chewing. "Chill. Got a raise. But still barely enough for rent out there. Might stay here a few more months." "That cool?" I smiled. Of course. I didn't mention the envelope I had already started preparing in my room. Inside it were the calculations, every cent I had spent on him, from diapers to dinners. Not out of spite, but clarity. Because love without respect is just servitude. 3 days later, I handed him the envelope. "What's this?" he asked, stretching on the couch. "Your bill," I said. He laughed. "What? Like a prank or something?" "No," I said. "For the maid services. The food. The years of support. I itemized it for you." His face changed, a slow confusion, hardening into disbelief. He flipped through the pages. Line after line. Item after item. Diapers. 3 years, $1,920. Formula and baby food for $1,310. Clothing. Infancy to 18, $18,600. School lunches and supplies, $6,800. Rent contribution estimate, $28,800. Utilities and water, $11,000. Groceries over 20 years, $46,720. Transportation, rides to school, events, emergencies, $9,500. Missed work due to your illness/school events, $15,200. Emotional labor, incalculable. Total due, $142,850. Payment plan, TBD. Thomas stared at the last page for a long time. Finally, he muttered, "Is this some kind of punishment?" "No," I said quietly. "This is a mirror." He didn't speak to me for 2 days. I didn't mind. I was too busy cleaning out my closet, packing away pieces of myself I had shelved for years. My old paints, a sketch pad, a flyer from a community center offering free art classes for seniors. My body might be tired, but my soul? She was finally waking up. On the 3rd day, Thomas knocked on my door. "I didn't mean it," he said. "That day? I was just joking. You know how people talk." I didn't say anything. "I was stupid," he whispered. "I'm sorry." I studied his face, the shame blooming there. The boy I raised was still inside him somewhere, clawing to come back. But I couldn't raise him again. That time had passed. "I forgive you," I said, "but I won't be your maid anymore." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "I understand." Thomas didn't move from my doorway for a long time. He looked like a man who had walked into a courtroom and realized too late that he was the one on trial. "Can I do anything to make this right?" he asked, barely above a whisper. I looked at him for what he was: not a villain, not even a bad son, but a boy who had grown up mistaking love for obligation, sacrifice for convenience. Maybe it was my fault too. I'd never let him see how hard it was. I kept my struggles quiet, thinking it would protect him. Instead, it blinded him. "Start by doing your own laundry," I said. His lips parted, then closed again. No protest, just a nod. "And after that," I added, "maybe clean the bathroom. Cook your own dinner. Pay part of the electric bill." He nodded again. I left him in the hallway and returned to my room, shutting the door with a finality I felt in my bones. The next morning, I heard the clatter of pots in the kitchen, not the graceful rhythm of someone who knew what they were doing, but the clumsy banging of a man trying to cook eggs without Googling it first. I smiled to myself. Baby steps. I stayed in bed longer than usual that day. My knees ached less when I didn't push them. The air felt lighter without the invisible weight of routine pressing on my chest. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed the world a single thing before 8 a.m. Later, I found Thomas staring blankly at a pile of laundry, looking defeated. "It doesn't fold itself," I said from the doorway. He turned. "Mom, there's like socks with no partners." I grinned. "Welcome to life." He cracked a smile, to a real one this time. Not smug, not entitled, just grateful. Maybe, finally, he was seeing the invisible work that had kept his world spinning. In the days that followed, our house changed. Not drastically, not immediately, but I noticed little things. He stopped leaving dishes in the sink. He started asking how my day was. He even refilled the toilet paper roll, something I had resigned myself to being the only human on earth who noticed. One evening, I came home from my part-time shift at the library, a new job I'd taken for a change of pace, and found dinner already made. Nothing fancy, just grilled cheese and tomato soup, but it warmed me more than 100 gourmet meals. Thomas sat across from me, fidgeting with his spoon. "I've been thinking," he said, "about everything." I waited. "I never meant to hurt you," he said, "but I know I did. And I think I've been stuck for a while, like, stuck in this weird place where I still feel like a kid, but the world keeps treating me like an adult. So I ran from everything, including you." I nodded. "That happens when you stay too long in the nest." He laughed softly. "Yeah, I think it's time I learned how to fly." We set a date. 3 months. 3 months for him to find a job with decent hours, save up, and move into his own place. I offered help, not money, just advice, which is sometimes harder to give. I showed him how to budget, how to apply for rentals, how to use baking soda to clean a sink. He took it seriously. For once. Each week, he checked in with me, showed me his savings, asked for interview tips. He even got a haircut, short, clean, professional, like the version of him I hadn't seen since high school graduation. Sometimes I caught myself feeling proud, then guilty. Was it wrong to still want to be proud, after everything? One Sunday afternoon, I was painting in the backyard. A breeze fluttered through the trees. Birds chirped from somewhere beyond the fence. And for the first time in years, my hands were free of calluses. Thomas walked up quietly and handed me a cup of lemonade. "You made this?" I asked, half joking. He laughed. "Fresh squeezed. Don't act so surprised." I took a sip. Tart, with just enough sugar. He sat beside me, watching the canvas. "What are you painting?" he asked. "Myself," I said. He looked again. The painting was abstract swirls of violet, gray, and ember, but it captured the storm inside me. "I like it," he said. "It's powerful." I looked at him, really looked, and saw the same boy I held in a hospital bed 2 decades ago, and yet not the same at all. Older. Wiser, maybe. A little broken. But trying. "You've changed," I said. He shrugged. "You too." We sat there for a long time, the silence stretching soft and warm like a second skin. 2 weeks before move-out day, he handed me a check. "For the bill," he said. "I know it doesn't cover it all, but I want to try." I stared at the paper. $3,000. Every dollar he had saved. I folded the check and gave it back. "Put it toward your deposit." "But thank you." He looked like he might cry. I reached out and touched his cheek, just like I had when he was a baby. "I never wanted payment," I whispered. "Just recognition." On his last night in the house, we had dinner together, just the two of us. No phones, no distractions. He told me about the apartment he'd rented, small, but with sunlight in the mornings. He even mentioned a job offer, warehouse work, full-time, benefits. When he finished his plate, he stood up and took his dish to the sink. Washed it, dried it, put it away. Then he turned to me. "Thank you, Mom, for everything. I mean that." I smiled. "Good luck out there." "I'll come by Sundays," he said. "Bring groceries. Help out." I raised a brow. "Like a maid?" He laughed, shaking his head. "No, like a son." That night, after he left, I sat in his empty room. The bed was neatly made. The desk was clean. For the first time in 24 years, it wasn't filled with noise, no video games, no laundry piles, no late-night pacing. Just stillness. I thought I'd cry, but I didn't. Instead, I stood in the center of the room and exhaled. Not in sadness and peace. A part of me had always feared letting go, thinking it meant I'd lose him. But now I knew better. Letting go is how we let people grow. And I had grown too. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was sad, but because silence takes getting used to. For 24 years, I had lived for someone else's schedule. Soccer practice, school plays, doctor appointments, job interviews that he overslept. The rhythm of my life had been choreographed to his needs. Now it was just me. At 5:34 a.m., my eyes opened. Out of habit. But instead of rushing to make breakfast or check if his uniform was washed, I sat up slowly. I stood in the center of my room, stretched, and listened to the quiet hum of morning. Then I brewed myself a fresh cup of coffee, not the extra sugary kind he liked. Just plain dark roast with oat milk. I drank it slowly, watching the light spill across my kitchen floor like a quiet miracle. For once, the house didn't smell like bacon or boy socks or reheated leftovers. It smelled clean, fresh, empty, but in a freeing way. In the weeks that followed, I surprised myself. I joined a seniors art class on Tuesdays. I applied for a part-time receptionist job at the community center not because I needed to work, but because I liked the idea of seeing new faces and using my mind again. And every morning, I painted. I painted everything I had once pushed down: loneliness, pride, anger, joy. My canvases were loud, messy, honest. One of the instructors even asked if I'd consider putting my pieces in the spring showcase. "Your work is emotional," she said. "People will see themselves in it." For the first time, I wasn't invisible. Thomas kept his word. Every Sunday, like clockwork, he'd show up at 10 a.m. with a bag of groceries and fresh laundry. He no longer acted like a guest in his childhood home. He acted like a grown man trying to make amends. He brought flowers for the kitchen table, replaced the filter in the AC without being asked. Once, I caught him sweeping the porch. "I figured the maid was off duty," he joked. I gave him a look. "Sorry," he said quickly. "Bad joke." But I laughed anyway. Sometimes humor is how we bleed without letting it stain. One Sunday, I asked him, "Do you ever think about your dad?" He paused, fingers still curled around his coffee mug. "Not really," he said. "He left before I could build anything real with him." I nodded. He missed out. Thomas leaned back, staring out the window. I used to wonder if that's what made you so tough. Like, maybe him leaving turned you into stone. That caught me off guard. Stone? Yeah, he said. You never broke. Even when we had nothing. I smiled softly. You don't raise a child in a storm by showing them the thunder. He looked at me then, something shifting in his eyes, a deeper recognition. I see that now. We were healing, slowly. But healing isn't a straight path. Sometimes it doubles back. Sometimes it stings more just as it starts to scab over. One Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang while I was at the art studio. It was Thomas. His voice was tight. Mom, I need you. He didn't ask. He just said it. And just like that, I dropped everything and ran. When I arrived at his apartment, the door was slightly ajar. Inside, he sat on the floor, his head buried in his hands. What happened? I rushed to his side. He looked up, his face wet, eyes bloodshot. I got laid off, he said. Company downsized. No warning. I sat beside him. And I got into an argument with Danielle, he added. She left. Took the cat. Blocked me. I didn't speak. He buried his face into my shoulder like he was 10 again, sobbing like the world had crumbled. And maybe, for him, it had. But this time, I didn't offer to fix it. I didn't offer money. I didn't offer advice. I just held him. Because sometimes, that's what love looks like, not solving, not lecturing, just staying. After a while, I stood up and went to the kitchen. I made us grilled cheese. He barely ate, but he smiled when I handed him the plate. You know, I said quietly, you're allowed to fall apart. He nodded. I thought I was doing it right this time. You are, I said. Falling doesn't mean you failed. It means you're learning where the cracks are. He looked at me, exhausted but open. Do you ever feel like you're too old to start over? I smiled. I feel like I'm just getting started. That night, I stayed on the couch while he slept in his room. The apartment was small and cluttered, but it was his. And in that space, I saw the same chaos I once lived in: ramen packets on the shelf, mismatched towels, a pile of laundry that looked suspiciously unfolded. But I didn't judge. We all begin somewhere. The next morning, he offered to make coffee. Burned it. We laughed. Then I hugged him goodbye, kissed his forehead like I hadn't in years, and walked back to my own life. My own quiet. My own rhythm. My own becoming. 3 weeks after losing his job, Thomas still hadn't found work. He applied everywhere: delivery apps, grocery stores, even a call center where he lasted 3 hours before walking out, saying the fluorescent lights made him feel like a corporate ghost. He was spiraling, not in anger, but in something quieter, scarier: disappointment in himself. I used to think hard work was enough, he told me over lunch one day. But it's like the world's on mute. No one's listening. I reached across the table. That doesn't mean you stop speaking. He stared at my hand for a moment, then placed his palm over mine. I wish I could pay you back, he said. For everything. I never asked for payback. I know, he whispered. That's what makes it worse. He moved back in temporarily, though neither of us used that word out loud. He brought less this time. No game consoles. No random junk. Just clothes, a few books, and a look in his eyes I hadn't seen in a long time: humility. He cooked when he could, cleaned without being asked. Every now and then, he'd ask if he could drive me to class, just to get out of the house. One night, as we sat on the porch watching the sky turn lavender, he asked, "Do you ever regret not having more?" More what? More life. More fun. Travel. Love. A second chance. I sipped my tea. Raising you was my second chance. He looked down. I didn't always make it easy. No, I smiled. But you made it worth it. In mid-March, my art instructor stopped me after class. There's an opening, she said. Gallery downtown. They're featuring works by women over 50. You should submit something. I laughed. I haven't shown my art to strangers since. Ever. All the more reason, she said. That night, I told Thomas. He looked stunned. Wait. Like a real gallery? I nodded. He grinned. Mom, that's incredible. You have to do it. I hesitated. What if they laugh? He raised an eyebrow. You raised me. You scrubbed gym floors and cooked rice on a broken stove. You survived me. Why would they scare you? That made me laugh. I submitted 3 pieces the next morning. A week later, I got the email. Accepted. Opening night was on a Friday. Thomas insisted on coming with me. He even ironed a shirt and bought me a bouquet of yellow roses. You always liked yellow, right? He asked. I cried a little. We arrived at the gallery and were greeted with soft lighting, clinking glasses, murmurs of admiration. My paintings were mounted on the far wall, resilience, empty plate, and laundry light. Strangers stood before them, staring, some even taking photos. One woman whispered, "This reminds me of my mom." Another said, "There's something so heavy in the brushstrokes, like love and loss in the same breath." I stood still, overwhelmed. Thomas placed a hand on my back. "They see you, Mom." And that more than applause, more than compliments undid me. For 24 years, I had been invisible. Now, I wasn't just seen. I was witnessed. After the show, we sat in the car for a long time, the bouquet between us. "I feel like I should have told people, 'That's my mom,'" Thomas said. "But it felt better just watching them feel what you made." I felt like I wasn't me for a long time, I confessed. I was just a function. "Not anymore," he said. "You're an artist. A human, not a maid." I smiled. "You're not just a bill, either." He chuckled, rubbing his face. That one stung, but I needed it. A few days later, Thomas got a call from a friend who owned a small coffee shop downtown. They needed someone to manage inventory and eventually move into a bigger role. He started part-time the next week. And he loved it. "It's simple," he told me one evening, "but honest. I like watching people come in half asleep and leave with hope in their hands." Within 2 months, he was managing the morning shift, handling vendors, even creating a loyalty card system that boosted customer traffic. He was growing, not just in skill and spirit. And I was growing too. I sold my first painting that month. Then another. I wasn't rich, but I had color back in my life. One morning, I woke up to find a note on the fridge. "Don't wait up. Going to look at apartments today. Thank you for being my lighthouse. T." I smiled. He found a place that same week. A tiny loft above a bookstore, with creaky wooden floors and a window that let the sun in just enough to keep a potted plant alive. Before he moved out, we had one last dinner together, not out of sadness, but celebration. He raised a glass of sparkling cider. To growth. I raised mine. To letting go. We clinked. But life wasn't done testing us. 3 weeks after he moved into his new place, I collapsed. A stroke. Small, doctors said, but enough to rattle the foundation I had only just rebuilt. I woke in the hospital with Thomas asleep at my bedside, fingers still holding my hand like he hadn't let go all night. When I stirred, he jolted upright. "Mom? Oh God, Mom. I'm okay," I croaked. He burst into tears. "I thought I lost you," he said. I thought I waited too long to grow up." I squeezed his hand. "You didn't. I saw it happen." Recovery was slow. He moved back in for a while, but this time, not as a dependent. As a caregiver. As a man. He handled the medications, the appointments, the meals. He even repainted the hallway so I could see color again while I limped from room to room with my cane. And every night, before I went to bed, he said, "Thank you for never giving up on me." That spring, the gallery invited me back, a full solo exhibit this time. I accepted, and at the entrance of the show, I placed one of my newest paintings. It showed a woman bent over a sink, her back strong, arms lined with years, and in the reflection of the window, a grown man watching her with awe, finally seeing her. I called it The Bill. People stood in front of it for a long time, some with hands over their mouths. I didn't need to explain it. The title said enough. And Thomas? He stood beside me the whole time, not ashamed, not small but proud. Not because I raised him, but because he had finally risen.